I was there, Gandalf.
I led Isildur into the heart of Mount Doom. Wait. Cast it into the fire! Destroy it! No. It should have ended that day, and evil was allowed to endure.
Nerdrotic.com.
Greetings, you over 1 million awakening wonders and the 40% who haven't subscribed yet. I have spent the last week fighting off a vicious, coordinated, and unwarranted campaign to deplatform this channel over the Acolyte, mostly by watching the X-Files with my wife and my dog. Despite all that, I think it's time to quiet the noise and extend an olive branch to the Disney Star Wars channels who didn't like my views on a poorly written Disney Star Wars show and the corporate access media entities that decided to chime in. And while you failed to get the Acolyte renewed and this channel and others canceled, I don't want you to get down because there's another show for you out there, and it's called The Rings of Power. It's got everything you need: contrived events, inane characters, lore-shattering, dumb wizards, shipping, and of course, thirst traps. And the good news for everyone is they are committed to 5 seasons. Amazon just confirmed this a couple of days ago. And as a firm rebuttal to the reports that Amazon had lost well over 50% of its audience from season 1 to season 2 with The Rings of Power, Amazon touts The Rings of Power season 2 ratings as strong, yet below first season.
What?
The company says 40 million viewers worldwide have watched at least some of the first 3 new Rings of Power episodes through the sophomore season's first 11 days. The company did not make clear, however, how much of the season or an episode those 40 million people viewed. In other words, trust me, bro. And let's keep in mind that the Rings of Power season 1 was beat out by some dude with a tractor in Tolkien's home country. Anyway, without further ado, let's talk about The Rings of Power, the show that's the equivalent of taking the Lord of the Rings books, including the appendices, sticking them in a blender, and then having them put back together with Scotch tape by Stevie Wonder and Helen Keller, except not as good. Previously on The Rings of Power.
Fire mountain awoke. The ground shakes. It spread through the bones of the earth, collapsing our sun shafts.
Our ability to grow crops.
No, I'm gonna starve!
These rings will be beyond any power yet devised by dwarf or man. They shall be rings of power.
Queen of Lies, unfit to rule!
His dying words, the king spoke to me and said it was from this she took counsel. This elf stone is your queen!
A legion of orcs have marched into elvish lands.
That trail, I gather it leads to Eregion. Your High King believes the dwarves to be unworthy. In fact, he has forbidden the forging of any more rings at all.
We have not the time to bandy words about convincing him who is worthy of aid.
Whoa, gay!
Now, some have said episode 5 is the best of the worst. Now, if by best you mean boring, sure. Since this episode is such a slog, we'll do what The Rings of Power does to the lore and just hit the bullet points. But unlike this show, we'll do it in order. And why not with your opening shot, rip off the opening shot of the 2 towers? We start out in Moria, where the dwarvish health and safety inspector said it wasn't safe to dig after the sun shafts collapsed. I mean, never mind the giant windows Moria has, but that's not important right now. And never mind the dwarves who mined out an entire mountain are all of a sudden afraid to dig. And although the dwarven rings were made for wealth and power, essentially, amplifying their natural skills, and eventually led to them being greedy in wrath, just like with Galadriel, they also come with a ringy sense. Durin III is able to find out where to dig, and the famine that started 2 days ago, 3 weeks ago, 3 months ago, I have no idea, is taken care of.
Barely an inconvenience.
Then the dwarves jump on the Middle-earth high-speed train and head on over to Eregion. Remember the Fellowship of the Ring?
Oh, I remember.
Remember the doors to Moria?
The doors of Durin, Lord of Moria. Speak, friend, and enter.
I remember.
At this point, dear viewer, because you didn't watch the show, you're probably wondering, did they show us the creation of the western doors of Moria? Nope, they didn't even do that. They just showed it.
The doors of Durin. Unbreachable, visible only by moonlight, and guarded by a password known only to friends.
Now, what the hell were the doors of Durin doing in Eregion in Sauron's presence? I have no idea. It's a good thing he didn't use the knowledge to find him and understand that password hint.
It works, sir. We have the combination.
Great. What's the combination?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yes.
That's amazing. I've got the same combination on my luggage.
Then Grandma Brimbor and Thirst Trapitar go and argue like an old married gay couple about putting some men's fingers in some rings.
Rings for men.
I did not say anything about rings.
It is a game you play.
Have you had a change of heart?
Come, we shall speak of men tomorrow.
I would prefer to speak of them now.
Cat teeth.
This is followed by quite possibly the worst travesty in this episode when discussing how easily corruptible men are. Hair Club for Minotaur, the Lord of Wigs, invokes names from the books.
There are always some who rise forth and shine. Eregion, Tur, Beren.
Now, Sauron right there is trying to justify giving rings to men by using the name Eregion, who is a half-elf. But to be fair to Amazon, they only had $1 billion and probably couldn't afford the research. But as far as Baron of Baron and Luthien is concerned...
Oh, wow! Will Smith just smacked the shit out of me.
Keep Baron's name out your mouth!
I'm going to, okay?
But then there's this unintentional but quite accurate meta statement from the show.
Let us not tempt failure by allowing our reach to exceed our grasp.
This brings us to the mighty men of Westerness, the Numenoreans. If adapted properly, this could take up its own show of 25 episodes per season for the next decade. In the Rings of Power, they've been reduced to a C plot that plays out like a telenovela. Don't believe me? El Numenoriano y el Encanto.
Que tus padres no están en Europa, sino en la miserable vecindad de Quinto Patio en la que vives. ¿Vas a negarme que vives en una vecindad?
Sí, es cierto.
You'll have to forgive me because I'm still trying to get this scene right in my head, but essentially Muriel tells Elendil to keep his head down because he had a vision in the Palantir of him riding a horse, and it wasn't the vision that she was getting from the Palantir of Numenor's destruction, although she didn't tell him she had that vision. If that doesn't make any sense to you, it shouldn't, because it doesn't. And before anybody tells me what Elendil's vision meant according to the lore, stop. We're talking about the Rings of Power here. And it's time we check back with this character.
Look familiar?
Actually, no. Oh yeah, the daughter of Elendil, an Amazon creation that was never in the lore, who betrays him for Ar-Pharazôn, who only exists to force meaningless conflict and give us scenes with some unintentionally meta lines that tell us exactly how Amazon feels about Tolkien.
You mock that which is sacred.
I mock that which is absurd.
And since we're overdue, it's time for some repurposed dialogue.
Until we meet again in the far green country under a swift sunrise.
A far green country under a swift sunrise.
Anyway, let's get this over with. Ar-Pharazôn tells his Amazon original character son that his mom said he wouldn't amount to anything, forcing him to be a guy whose name I can't bother to remember, going off to kill a guy whose name I can't bother to remember. I'm supposed to care so much about this character who is dying. I just remembered his name when the closed captions reminded me of it. Oh no, don't die! No! I will avenge you! Checks notes. Valandil! Meanwhile, back in Moria, we get another unintentional meta line that describes how everyone involved in this show really feels.
A gift from Owley, one that's honed and refined over a lifetime. And this, it feels somehow like cheating.
Now, if I told you the following scene was Disa dropping a crystal ball down a hallway about 10 feet from a major market that no dwarves have discovered in thousands of years, and then singing and waking up a Balrog, would you believe me? Well, that's exactly what happens. Disa drops a ball down a hallway about 10 feet from a major market, and then sings and wakes up a Balrog. But not to worry, the Balrog is a slow riser. It's gonna take him a little under 4,000 years to finally get out of bed, which means about 2 or 3 weeks with this show. Then we get to see Durin III pass out the 7 dwarven rings, which canonically he shouldn't even have. The dwarves and the men don't get their rings until after the elves turn on Sauron, and I don't even know why I bother. Meanwhile, back in Eregion, the Amazon original character Mauritania, maternity, not really sure and don't care, makes her own ring and turns invisible, which apparently is something that's lifted from Lord of the Rings Online.
Ages ago, in the vastness of Eregion, the Dark Lord came in fair guise. In those days, he beguiled Narmalith, daughter of Lindon, and broke her mind.
How strange. When the light caught your hair, For a moment, you seemed her perfect likeness.
Whose likeness?
Why, Lady Galadriel's, of course.
Definition of a red flag, isn't it?
Shout out to High King Fan or Alpha Chat on X Twitter for pointing this out. These series of events almost caused Grandma Brimbor to give up his secret to Sauron about putting some men's fingers in some rings. And now the daddies are arguing again, which leads to a staff meeting with the mostly female elven smiths of Eregion. And this is all over the corruption of the dwarven rings, and instead of recalling them, the multicultural elven smiths of Eregion decide to fight the evil rings by making more evil rings. This, of course, will be followed by a disinformation campaign, and anyone who calls this out will be called anti-smithing and against the smithing, because the smithing is settled. Meanwhile, back in Lindon, High District Manager Gil-galad finally hears from Grandma Brimbor. And although it's been quite some time, how much time exactly, I have no idea with this show, and they've lost multiple messengers, and they sent out Galadriel, Doogie, Elrond, and 4 of the best and brightest from your local Starbucks. And despite the message being completely suspicious, saying everything's fine and I'll do exactly what you say, and Elrond showing up after a good sprint from Eregion, saying it's been compromised, High District Manager Gil-galad says, nah, it'll be fine. We're going to attack Mordor instead. And it wouldn't be an episode of Rings of Power without Warrior Galadriel. As you probably didn't know because you didn't watch last episode, she was captured by Adar. And despite all of her rage, she's still just a rat in a cage. And you may notice the orcs are fearful of Warrior Galadriel, as they should be. They're all just torturing hard to bring maggoty bread home to their families. But because this is Warrior Galadriel, she isn't captured long. She pulls a prison shank out of her prison wallet. And this episode saved the most absurd and the worst for last. The Amazon original character Adar offers an alliance to Galadriel with the orcs, which is as ridiculous as shipping Sauron and Galadriel. You know, I long for the days of regular old bad writing and incompetence, because this goes further than that. Again, you have to try to assassinate characters and mock that which is sacred this badly. That's why I will continue to mock that which is absurd. But the Tolkien estate is behind this, and Simon Tolkien is a consultant. Listen, my dad was an accountant. Do you want me doing your taxes? Listen, we're dealing with showrunners J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay, who completely screwed up the order of the making of the rings so they can do it in the order of the ring poem.
It's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
And if you don't think they're shipping Anna Brimbor,
Charlie Vickers turns up at your doorstep. You know let him in.
Yeah, I probably would, yeah.
But it's no doubt this show is taking a beating that it earned. Remember, the showrunners said that the fandom was patently evil. Well, they've changed their tune a little bit. The Rings of Power showrunner is happy for people to hate watch and make YouTube videos about Season 2. It wouldn't be a journey through Middle-earth without some trolls along the way. From the people who wanted to make Lord of the Rings for dummies that ended up being Lord of the Rings by dummies. And once again, I'll remind Amazon that they are the Melkor of this story. They weave the discord in Tolkien's Song of Creation.
Nerdrotic.com.
If you like what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like what you heard, I thank you for listening this long. I will see you in the next video.
Cast it into the fire! Destroy it!